Take a look at this island. See that? It's got an airport, a military base, even advanced missile systems. The whole shebang. But what if I told you that just a few years ago, none of this was here? It was just open ocean. Okay, we have to dive into this because what you're looking at isn't just an island. It's a clue to one of the most insane engineering projects in modern history. What you're seeing is part of China's Great Wall of Sand. And look, that is not an exaggeration. We are talking about a country literally building new territory out of thin air, right in the middle of some of the most contested waters on the entire planet. How they're doing it, and more importantly, why, is a real-life geopolitical thriller. So first off, how is this even possible? I mean, you can forget everything you learned in geology class. This isn't about volcanoes or tectonic plates. These are phantom islands, basically being summoned from the seafloor at a speed that has left military planners and satellite analysts totally speechless. This is happening around the clock. Imagine fleets of these gigantic dredging ships. They're basically massive vacuum cleaners for the ocean, sucking up millions of tons of sand and coral from the seabed. Then they just spray it all onto submerged reefs, literally building new land. And we're not talking about little sandbars here. These are permanent military bases with deep water harbors and 10,000-foot airstrips. In effect, China is building itself unsinkable aircraft carriers, hundreds and hundreds of miles away from its own coast. Which, of course, brings us to the trillion-dollar question. Why? Why go to all this trouble to build these fortresses in what looks like the middle of nowhere? Well, it's because this patch of water, the South China Sea, it's not nowhere. In a lot of ways, it's the center of everything. Let's just start with the money. Every single year, more than $3 trillion in global trade sails right through these shipping lanes. To put that in perspective, that's about a third of all maritime commerce on Earth. This isn't just a sea. It's one of the planet's main economic arteries. But that's just what's floating on the surface. What's underneath the waves is a whole other prize. We're talking an estimated 11 billion barrels of oil just sitting there under the seabed. That's a game changer for any country trying to power its future. And if you think that's a lot, it gets even bigger. On top of the oil, there's an estimated 190 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. So you can see why this is about way more than just building sandcastles. If you control the sea, you control a staggering amount of the world's energy. And hey, if energy and trade weren't enough, there's also food. A full 10% of the entire world's fish supply comes from these waters. It feeds hundreds of millions of people. This sea is a lifeline, and everybody wants to be the one holding it. But here's the thing. When you build a new world, you usually have to destroy an old one. And the environmental cost here is just brutal. Over 7,000 acres of ancient living coral reef, we're talking entire ecosystems, have been completely wiped out, buried forever under tons of sand and concrete. And yeah, while others have done some building in the area, the data is pretty clear. China is responsible for the vast majority of this destruction. So the stakes are absolutely astronomical. And this is where the story shifts from a massive construction project to a ticking time bomb. It all boils down to a fight over a map, or really, two totally different versions of reality. Okay, so let me break this down. On one side, you have basically the rest of the world. They operate under an international treaty called UNCLOS. It's simple. Your country gets exclusive economic rights to the sea for 200 miles off your coast. Pretty clear rules. But then you have China's rule. They pull out this old map from 1947, draw a line with 9 dashes on it that covers almost 90% of the entire sea, and say, nope, based on history, all of this is ours. The problem? These two maps cannot exist at the same time. It's a fundamental clash of world orders. So here's the puzzle. How do you enforce a claim that almost nobody else on Earth recognizes without starting a massive war? Well, you get clever. You get really clever. China has rolled out a strategy that is so effective, it's now being studied in military academies all over the world. It's called salami slicing, and it's kind of brilliant in a devious way. The idea is you don't make one big aggressive move that everyone can unite against. Instead, you make hundreds of tiny moves. A little slice here, a small push there. Each individual action is way too small to go to war over. But when you add up all those little slices over time, you end up with the whole salami. And out on the actual water, they use a tactic that sounds almost harmless, but is incredibly effective. They call it the cabbage strategy. Here's how it works. Step 1, you want to take over a reef. You surround it with hundreds of fishing boats. Those are the outer leaves of the cabbage. Step 2, you back them up with your white-hulled Coast Guard ships, a tougher layer. And then, step 3, you bring in the hardcore, your gray-hulled Navy warships. You just wrap the target layer by layer until you've squeezed your opponent out completely, all without ever firing a shot. It is, for all intents and purposes, a slow-motion blockade. But you can't just squeeze everybody out forever. The Philippines decided to fight back. Not with warships, but with lawyers. They took China to the highest maritime court in the world, which set the stage for this epic legal showdown. The final verdict was going to put the entire region on a razor's edge. And then, in 2016, the verdict dropped. And it wasn't just a ruling, it was a bombshell. The International Court delivered a complete and total takedown of China's claims. Point by point, they ruled the 9-dash line has no legal basis. China has no historical rights to the resources. They violated the Philippines' sovereignty, and they caused severe harm to the environment. It was an absolute legal knockout punch. A legal knockout that China just completely ignored. Their response was immediate and defiant. Beijing dismissed the entire legally binding international ruling as, and this is a direct quote, a piece of paper that is destined to come to naught. And with that one sentence, the entire conflict changed. It was no longer a battle of maps. It was a battle of wills. International law versus raw national power. And that is exactly where we are today. On one side, you have a great wall of sand, protected by an increasingly powerful military. And on the other, you have that piece of paper backed by the entire international legal system. With warships from global powers patrolling these waters and trillions of dollars on the line, the stage is set. So the question is, what happens next? You know, this story is far from over. The answer to that question is being written as we speak. For more geopolitical facts and to keep following stories just like this one, make sure you subscribe to Global Lens.